So there I was, sitting down for our Thanksgiving dinner, thinking it was going to be another cozy family night. But man, my daughter Fern had other plans. She stared me down and said, "The best gift would be if you disappeared." Yep, those were her exact words. So guess what? I did just that. I took care of their mortgage, packed up their stuff, and took off to Hawaii. But it was the note I left on her desk that really shook things up. As I rummaged in my jacket pocket, I felt the corner of the envelope, hoping it might end our Thanksgiving evening on a happier note. The dining room was warm, almost too warm. The fire was crackling behind me, casting this cozy orange glow over our table, still covered with remnants of the holiday feast. If you peered out the window, you'd see snowflakes lazily drifting over Oak Park. Inside, the chandelier gave everything this lovely soft glow, straight out of a Christmas card. Maria's picture was up on the mantel, smiling like she did in the good days. Getting up from the table took more effort than I remembered, feeling those 65 years. "Hey, Fern, sweetheart," I called out, trying to sound casual but failing big time. "Got something for you. Happy Thanksgiving." I handed the envelope over to her, my hands a little worse for wear, while hers were pristine. She tore it open with a swipe of her thumb, still glued to her phone, while Sophie was diving into her pumpkin pie and Vernon was on his second round of turkey. Alex's face glowed blue with his phone screen, not giving anything away. Inside was $5,000. Pretty decent in my opinion, meant to cover the credit card debt she'd been stressing about during an early morning panic call last month. Fern scanned the numbers, her expression giving away nothing. Not a smirk or a raised eyebrow. She just said, 5,000 mons, like she'd found an old receipt. I felt my chest tighten. "Well, I figured it might help with that credit card debt," I said. She looked up and her eyes were colder than any winter scene you could paint. "The best gift would be if you just disappeared." Time sort of warped. The sound of the fire faded into a hum. Vernon's knife hung in midair. Sophie's fork stuck suspended, and Alex's fingers paused over his screen. But Fern's face didn't change, like she was talking about the weather. I tried to say something, anything, but my throat was dry and my voice was nowhere to be found. My hands were shaking, so I clung onto my chair. Everything felt distant, like the room was spinning. Had she really said that? What? I barely managed to whisper. "You heard me," Fern replied, setting the check back on the table like it was just scrap paper. "You're always around, hovering, throwing your money around. Can't breathe with you here." The fire crackled, a log shifted, shooting sparks up. "Maybe," Vernon started to say, but clammed up when she cut him off with a sharp, "Shut up, Vernon." Her focus didn't leave me. "Dad needs to know," she continued. "We've got our own lives, and he's always in our business." "Grandpa," Sophie's small voice tried to break through, but it was lost in the moment. 15 years of mortgage payments. 15 years of taking those calls, fixing what broke, paying the bills they couldn't. Those numbers ran through my head as I listened to my daughter explain why she thought I wasn't needed. "I just wanted to help," I mumbled, though it sounded weak in the quiet room. "Help?" Fern echoed with this laugh, completely void of humor. "You just wanted to trap us, make us dependent on your handouts. Well, congrats, Dad. You did it. We're stuck." Vernon kept slicing his turkey, eyes not leaving his plate. Sophie's face fell, but she stayed quiet. "And Alex?" He scrolled on as if nothing was happening. The check just lay there on the table among the dishes. 5 grand no one seemed to care about. My hands had a mind of their own, trembling without my permission. I glanced around the table. Vernon avoiding my eyes, Sophie filled with concern, Alex unfazed, and Fern, well, she was her confident self. They might not all have thought it, but enough of them had for Fern to voice it aloud, surrounded by the leftovers of turkey and under the watchful gaze of my late wife's photograph. Standing across the room, her eyes seemed silently to judge me. "What did you just say?" My voice sounded distant, disbelief coloring the air at the suggestion of her wishing I'd be dead. "I said what I said," Fern shot back, her arms folded tightly. "And you know it's the truth. Once you're out of the picture, we'll finally be free. The house will be ours. The money will be ours. Our lives will belong to us. The fire flickered loudly. Snow weighed heavily against the windows, and the chandelier's harsh light exposed every crack in the illusion I tried so hard to maintain about my family. I pushed back from the table, feeling the years pressed down on my knees, back, and the tight, painful knot in my chest. I think I need some air, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness. Although everything else, my hands, my vision, my understanding of Fern, was shaky, my voice was not. I headed toward the kitchen, trying to escape Fern's frosty stare, Vernon's obvious fear, and the feeling of those 15 years that a single check had just diminished. The kitchen door was only a step away, but it might as well have been miles. Behind me, Fern's voice continued, fading into the crackle of the fire and the pounding of my heart. I slipped into the kitchen, leaving them all at the table with their turkey and blunt truths. The door shut behind me, sealing out the dining room's noise. The fluorescent light buzzed above, casting a cold, clinical brightness that sharply contrasted the dining room's warmth. I went straight to the sink, gripping its edge with both hands. The counter dug into my palms as I peered out at the accumulating snow on the back fence. In the dark window, an old man with graying hair stared back, lost and bewildered. I turned the faucet on and splashed cold water over my face. The shock was jarring enough to pull me back from the emotional undertow. She really said that. My daughter believed the world would be better off without me. I splashed more water on my face, letting it fall off my chin into the sink cluttered with dirty prep bowls and spatulas. The smell of turkey mingled with the sharp sweetness of dish soap. Mechanically, I reached for a towel, but then the door banged open. "Don't just walk away from me," Fern's voice ricocheted off the tiled walls, sharp and angry. She covered the distance in a few quick strides and grabbed the sponge, tackling the dishes with aggression. Plates clattered as she worked, echoing her mood. I turned to face her slowly. "I just needed a breath, Fern. What you said, it was hurtful." "Hurtful?" She let out a laugh with no joy in it, scrubbing even harder. "You want to talk about hurt? Try living in your shadow for 40 years. Try constantly hearing how every penny spent is like a chain." "That's not what I meant," I began, but she cut me off. "I've heard about your sacrifices my entire life. The house, the bills, school supplies, car repairs. Constant reminders of everything you've done for us as though we asked you. You did. Every time you called at 2 a.m. because the furnace broke down. Every time Vernon lost yet another job and you needed rent money. Every time," I replied quietly, maintaining my calm. "We needed your help because you made sure we needed it," Fern retaliated, throwing the sponge into the sink. She turned toward me, hands dripping with soapy water. "You put the house in your name so you could hold it over us, control us, keep us tethered." The only sound in the room was the refrigerator's hum. A car passed by outside, casting fleeting shadows over the snow-covered yard. "I bought the house because you couldn't afford it," I clarified. "You and Vernon were 3 months behind on rent with a newborn. What was I supposed to do?" "Let us figure it out on our own," she said defiantly, her voice rising. "Maybe we would have managed. Maybe we didn't need you coming in to rescue us like some hero demanding debt disguised as gratitude." As she got closer, there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. More than just anger or frustration, there was a hardness in them, something that had been building up quietly over time while I was busy with life's responsibilities. Her finger poked at my chest with each word she said, each one landing like a jab. She wanted us to need her forever. I stepped back from the counter. "Fern, that's not it. I just wanted you and the kids to have a good, safe home. Or maybe," Fern snapped back, "you wanted to make sure we could never leave, to keep us here, dependent on you. Without that, what are you, Dad? Just an old man in a big empty house." Her words hit harder than any push. I raised my hands not to defend myself, but to acknowledge the loss. "Is that really what you think, after everything?" I managed to say. Fern paused, caught her breath, and her anger softened to something that looked more like hurt, but it was still tough. "I think you need to hear this, Dad. Mom would have wanted you to hear it." My response was quick and sharp. "Leave your mother out of this." Fern's gaze remained steady. Why not? She knew how you are, always needing to be in charge, always making it about your sacrifices. I swallowed hard, my words coming out uneven. Your mom would be disappointed to hear you talk like this. Fern's face twisted with more anger. Don't use mom. We lost her because of the stress you caused. You were always busy at work, never around. That's not true, I said softly, but with enough firmness to make her pause. That's a lie, and deep down you know it. Your mom had a heart condition, Fern. The doctors explained it all. You were there. Fern hugged herself tighter. Convenient diagnosis, isn't it? Makes it easier to blame something else. The kitchen felt smaller. The lights above buzzed louder, and my heart pounded, drowning out everything else. The counter's edge pressed into my back. Why are you doing this? What did I do so wrong? I loved you, provided for you, wanted the kids to have the stability you didn't have. Fern shot back immediately. We want to move, she blurted. Vernon and I want to sell the house and start over in Arizona. But we can't because it's in your name. Because you'll stop us, like always. That was it. It was about the house, not past wounds or feelings. They wanted to cash in on what I'd worked hard for all these years to escape to Arizona. I see. My words came out flat and exhausted. Do you? Really? Fern's voice softened, almost pleading. We're stuck here, Dad. Vernon can't find a job, and I'm stuck in retail management. The kids are growing up overshadowed by you. We need a fresh start, but you won't let us have it. I looked at her, trying to really see her. When did my little girl, who used to hand me tools in the garage, become this stranger? When did my help become control in her eyes? When did caring become manipulation? I'm going to leave you now. I moved past the counter toward the bedroom door. Yeah, run away. You always do. Her sharp words following me. Can't face the truth, so you hide, just like with Mom. I paused in the doorway, but didn't turn back, just leaned against the frame. This house, the home I'd spent 15 years building, felt like a trap. I couldn't tell who was really caught inside. I walked down the hallway, leaving Fern in the kitchen's cold, cluttered light, and closed the door behind me once I reached the bedroom. I sat there in the dark for what felt like hours before finally turning on the lamp. The old rocking chair by the window held me again, as it had on many restless nights. Outside, Chicago was wrapped in winter's chill. Snow drifted past street lamps, occasionally pierced by headlights, with a distant siren wailing somewhere. My reflection in the window showed an older man, alone with too many thoughts. Time seemed to drag on as I kept my eyes glued to the clock, watching those hands inch from 10 to 11 and finally to midnight. My body was begging for sleep, but my head was running laps. I couldn't shake the images of being in the kitchen under those glaring dining room lights, with Fern's sharp eyes practically willing me to disappear. She didn't want me easing into retirement down in Florida or finding peace in some quiet place. No, she wanted me completely out of their lives so they could have the house and start fresh in Arizona. As the clock edged closer to 1 a.m., I slowly got up, every joint groaning like they do these days. I shuffled over to the bookshelf, crammed with everything we've cherished, Maria's precious books, my old engineering guides. I just stood there, surrounded by our shared history. Deep in the pile was the photo album with its worn leather cover, waiting for me. I opened it, and the cover creaked softly, a sound that echoed my moments of solace found in its pages. The first picture was of Maria, glowing in her wedding gown from 1982, her smile so vibrant it seemed to brighten the faded photo. Next to her, there I was, a 23-year-old guy, confident that life would always be good. Flipping through, there was baby Fern, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine. Another showed toddler Fern at the park, giggling as I pushed her on the swings. There she was at 5 in my workshop, serious-faced under a too-big hard hat, giving me a wrench. I lingered over one photo more than the others. Maria was holding Fern, perhaps 3 then, both caught mid-laugh at something out of frame. Maria wore that yellow sundress she loved, present at all the important occasions like Fern's school events. In the picture, Fern's eyes met the camera with pure love, untarnished and innocent. But when did that shift, I wondered. I gently touched Maria's likeness, cautious with the delicate old print. "Oh, Maria," I muttered into the silent room. She looked so content, even with baby Fern, who used to see me as a hero. The question haunted me. When did Daddy become just Dad, and then something more like burden? Was it when Maria passed 8 years ago, and I was left to navigate through Fern's grief on my own? Maybe it happened when Fern tied the knot with Vernon, and financial worries crept into our chats. Or perhaps it was a slow, unnoticed fade beneath countless small betrayals. I carefully closed the album, aware of its weight in my hands. The lamplight reflected off my hands, hands that carried scars of a life spent in construction. There was a burn scar from a welding mishap back in '98, calluses from a lifetime of using tools, and a white scar on my palm from a nasty cut during a project. Every mark told a story of my struggle to provide. Scars were like receipts. I remembered paying 15 years of mortgage, adding up to $287,000, and another $18,000 racked up when credit cards bailed us out. Not a penny of that covered car repairs, emergency funds, school needs, or hospital charges when Vernon's insurance ran dry. None of it acknowledged or repaid, just expected or even begrudged. Maria's voice echoed in my head. "Lem, don't let folks mistake your kindness for weakness." Something she'd remind me when contractors tried to pay me less, or when neighbors took my help for granted. I finally got it. Her words hit home as I realized adult Fern only called when strings were attached. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass, looking out at the city's sprawling lights, each representing a life, likely grappling with their own wrestles of giving and drawing lines. When does selflessness become just a self-made trap? When does love morph into a tool of burden? "I thought I was shaping a legacy," I mumbled to my reflection. Turns out I was crafting my own cage. Yet there's something Fern didn't see, that Vernon overlooked, and something dawning on me that night. I never intended to make them dependent. I acted out of love. Because when you hear your child crying at 2 a.m., you help. When your grandkids need winter jackets, you buy them. When the heating conks out mid-January, you get it sorted. That's what a father does. Or should, I figured. They twisted everything around, pointing fingers at me for being selfish when really, the selfish ones were them. They had their eyes on the house, on my investment, all that I poured in over 15 years, and saw me as the obstacle in their way. That night I sat all by my lonesome in my room, while everyone else was either catching Z's or just faking it. It hit me then. I was tired of being like a ghost in my own life story. I wasn't sure what my next steps would be, but as I leaned my head against the cold window glass, with Maria's picture there beside me, I had this feeling like something inside was finally changing. The tension that had been simmering for years finally boiled over. I turned away from the window and looked around my bedroom, the one place where I felt I truly fit in. There was Maria's photo, sitting in its usual spot in a silver frame on the nightstand. I picked it up and, looking at her smiling face, whispered, "I'm sorry, Maria. I tried my best." Really, I did. I put the photo back down gently and moved to the bed, sitting on its edge. A different kind of tiredness hung over me. Not the kind that comes from being beaten down, but more like a relief-laden sigh. The past was inked in stone. I couldn't undo Fern's sharp words or reclaim those years of sacrifice. But the future? That was mine to decide. I'd made up my mind, even if I hadn't ironed out any details yet. Out there, Chicago was being gently cloaked by a new layer of snow. A blank sheet, a fresh start. That's what I needed. Not Arizona, but something brand new to show my daughter what it looks like to really move on. I didn't catch a wink of sleep. As dawn's gray light crept through the window, I sat in the chair, watching the city wake up under its fresh snow blanket. 7 in the morning came quietly. My muscles ached from sitting in that rocking chair forever. But mentally, I hadn't felt this clear-headed in ages. Getting up wasn't easy. My knees protested, my back groaned, but I managed to stand. The hallway lay empty and quiet in front of me. Whether Fern and her family were ignoring me or just sleeping in didn't matter much. The kitchen felt like it was haunted by yesterday's drama. Dirty plates still piled up in the sink, and the ghost of leftover turkey still lingered in the air. I brushed it all off and went straight for the coffee maker, throwing in grounds without a care for measurement. I needed it strong, strong enough to fuel a construction worker through a marathon shift. As the coffee began gurgling away, my eyes wandered to the cabinet above the fridge, the resting place for all our important papers. The folders were labeled in Maria's neat handwriting from way back when she organized everything. I reached up and pulled one down. It felt heavier than I remembered. After pouring a cup of coffee so thick it nearly looked like tar, I took a seat at the table. Inside was a hodgepodge of insurance documents, warranty booklets, old bills, and buried beneath it all, a contract. Its cream-colored paper was aging gracefully, the edges turning yellow, with my signature in bold blue ink. Dated March 15, 2010. Numbers floated into focus. Property address 342 Oak Street, Oak Park. Purchase price $320,000. Primary owner Lemuel Gomez. Fern's voice from an old conversation echoed in my mind. It's your house, in your name. Of course, she was right. I stared at my signature, memories tugging at me, yanking me back 14 years. Back to when I thought I was handing my daughter a fresh start. I could see it all again. Spring of 2010. Fern had turned up at our old house, the smaller one Maria and I got when we first tied the knot, in a different neighborhood, from a different chapter of my life. I was 50 then, still deep into my construction work, hoping that retirement wasn't something to worry about for a good while yet. The doorbell rang just after breakfast, and when I peeked through the peephole, there she was. Tears streaked across her face, with baby Sophie swaddled up against the chilly March air. "Dad," she managed to say when I let her inside. "Dad, we got rejected." She shoved a letter at me. Chase Bank's letterhead slapped with a big "application denied" on top. I skimmed it right there in the doorway as she sobbed into Sophie's blanket. Low credit score, unfavorable debt-to-income ratio, sketchy work history. "What about Vernon's job?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Fern's face just about crumpled even more. "He's without a job right now. The shop let him go 3 months ago. Between jobs is going to be Vernon's forever state soon enough. Come on, Dad, the kids need a secure home. We found this fantastic spot in Oak Park. Great schools, safe neighborhood. We just need some help with the down payment. Can you co-sign?" At that moment, Sophie, just a 6-month-old bundle of innocence and trust, wrapped her tiny fingers around mine. I looked from her innocent face to my daughter's pleading eyes, feeling my resolve waver. "How much do you need?" when I asked. "Just co-sign. I promise we'll pay you back once Vernon lands a stable job." That afternoon, we went to Chase Bank together. The loan, a loan officer, all business, probably in her 40s with a no-nonsense attitude and practical haircut, reviewed our situation. Her desk was a maze of papers, with computer screens displaying numbers that seemed massive back then, but were everyday now. She called out to me, "Mr. Gomez." Adjusting her reading glasses, she said, "As you're the main earner with a solid credit history, we'll list you as the primary owner. Your daughter will just be a co-resident." I paused at that. Not co-owner, primary owner, which felt significant. But there was Fern, making little Sophie laugh on her lap. I shrugged off the detail. Family takes care of family. So I said, "That's fine." Sign where she pointed. Family takes care of family, right? As we left the bank, Fern gave me a big hug, with Sophie tucked between us. She said, "Thank you, Daddy. You're the best. We'll make you proud, I promise." That was the last time she ever called me Daddy. Fast forward to 2024, I was parked at the kitchen table, clutching a cold cup of coffee, staring at a signature that felt like it belonged to another me. The small print on that contract suddenly screamed out. So obvious now. Primary owner, Lemuel Gomez. Property address, 342 Oak Street, Oak Park, Illinois. Co-resident, Fern Gomez Vernon. Mortgage for 30 years. Monthly bill around $1,600. Out came my old calculator. The trusty kind with big buttons perfect for construction bids. 15 years on, 12 monthly payments, each $1,600. The math added up cold as ice. $287,000. That figure didn't even count fluctuating interest rates. Not all the extra payment boost when bills lag behind. Not 3 emergency credit card rescues, $18,000 more. And don't forget Vernon's car breakdowns, perfectly timed before Christmas every year. I grabbed a fresh piece of paper listing everything down like a construction project expense. Total mortgage, $287,000 credit card assists, $18,000 car fixes, $12,000 school expenses, $8,000 emergency loans, $15,000 extra help, $9,000. That reached up to $349,000 over 15 years. Never a cent returned, never recognized. Just expected, eventually resented, used against me. Vernon's between jobs is now jobless for good. Fern's promise to pay returned as accusations of control. My help had turned into their trap. With bold letters, I jotted "House Rot's mine" on the notepad. Legally, completely. I gazed at the words. Fern hurled "your house" at me like a barb, but in a twist, she was spot on. My name on all the papers, sweat, and money in every corner. Mine. Hearing footsteps overhead snapped me out of it. Someone was up. I swiftly gathered the documents, tucked them into the folder, and stood up. My legs felt fortified. Nothing like purpose to bring life to old bones. I trod back to my room, gripping the folder like armor, caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I saw myself, a 65-year-old with gray hair and weary eyes, but standing more assured than in days. Behind me stood the house, all mine, and ahead an as-yet unclear plan that shaped more with each step. Closing my bedroom door quietly, I placed the folder on the nightstand by Maria's picture. Her smiling face seemed to say, "You've got this." I finally had all my proof, legal, financial, perhaps even ethical. Now it was about logistics. I just needed a pro to confirm what I already believed. Calling Mark from my bedroom felt kind of sneaky, which was ridiculous. This was my space, my decision, my business. But I still lowered my voice. I'd been keeping his number on a business card in my wallet for ages. We used to work together back in the day when his firm took care of contract law for the construction company. Then he went out on his own and, luckily, offered Saturday hours for old friends. Mark Rivera. "Hey Mark, it's Lim Gomez. I need some legal advice," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Can we meet today?" There was a pause then. "Lim, of course, buddy. What's up? You sound—" "I'll explain when we meet. Can you come by at 10 a.m. tomorrow? Is Saturday good?" He agreed, and I hung up before he could pepper me with questions. That left me with all of Friday to dodge my family and figure out what to say. How do you even go about explaining to your lawyer that your daughter said she wished you were dead, and now you're rethinking everything? Finding the right words wasn't easy, but I had the data sorted out. Friday was tough, like watching an injured animal try to move. I mostly hid in my room, mumbling about not feeling well whenever Sophie knocked to offer me lunch. Her worried tone bothered me more than Fern's silence. But I couldn't talk about it, not yet, not with anyone. Spent the day diving into Illinois property law on my laptop, looking up terms I hadn't needed to know before. Tenancy at will, month-to-month occupancy, primary ownership rights, eviction procedures, stuff like that. The dry legal jargon hit a basic truth. The name on the deed holds all the power, plain and simple. When Friday night arrived, sleep was hard to come by, not because of sadness this time, but from planning and plotting. By the time Saturday's dawn arrived, I had my strategy in place. Around 7:30 in the morning, I finally took a shower after a 2-day avoidance. Put on some nice clothes, the charcoal slacks and blue shirt I had worn to Maria's funeral. It was a nod to Mark's time and the seriousness of what I intended. Grabbed my folder and wallet and slipped out of the quiet house. If anyone noticed, they didn't stop me. The Blue Line trip from Oak Park to downtown Chicago took about half an hour. Jumped on at Harlem Station, found a window seat, and watched the scenery change, from calm neighborhoods to gritty industrial areas, and finally to the busy urban core, with skyscrapers touching the sky and Lake Michigan reflecting like a giant mirror. Everyone kept to themselves as expected. A mom with her kids, a teen lost in music, a guy in a suit swiping through his phone. We were all wrapped up in our own worlds, speeding along under the city toward whatever required our attention. Getting off at the Washington stop, I was just 2 blocks from Mark's building. As I surfaced from the subway, a sharp November breeze from the lake hit me, making my eyes water. I hurried along, holding the folder close like it contained secrets. The building was one of those glossy glass and steel structures that scream success. Inside the marble lobby, a bored security guard pointed me to the elevators after signing me in. Up to the 28th floor, ears popping. The elevator doors opened to reveal Rivera and Associates in shiny brass. A small firm, but top tier. The young receptionist gave a professional smile. "Mr. Gomez, Mark's expecting you. Go right in. Second door on the right." Mark's office had the stunning view I'd imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing downtown in all its glory, with Lake Michigan starting to freeze over. Mark rose as I entered. At 50, he was fit from regular gym visits, his hair going silver at the temples. We shook hands. Firm grip, full of concern. "Lim, sit down." He nodded at the leather chair across from his desk. "Need some coffee? You look like you could use it." "I'm past coffee, Mark." I sank into the seat, pushed the folder across his shiny desk. "I need answers." He settled into his chair, pulled the folder closer, and opened it up. His expression shifted from relaxed to all business as he skimmed the first page. With his glasses on, he read silently, breaking the stillness with just the occasional crinkle of paper or a quiet hum that could mean anything. Minutes ticked by. Outside, a helicopter buzzed across the skyline. Inside, I watched Mark work his way through the details, probably double-checking something on an Illinois property database on his computer. Knowing him, he was jotting notes on a legal pad. His handwriting usually looked like chaos, but it likely made perfect sense to him. Finally, he leaned back, took off his glasses, and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Lim," he said, his voice heavy and serious, "legally, that property is completely yours." I felt something inside me let go. Finally, some validation. "Can you break that down for me?" I asked. Mark pointed to the contract. "You're the main owner. It's all your name, your credit, your financial responsibility. Your daughter just has a co-resident status. Basically, on paper, she's a tenant with no ownership stake. You've been making every payment for," he glanced at his notes, "15 years. So, can I take it back?" I questioned. He blinked at me in surprise. "Take it back? Lim, you never gave it away." It was like they were living in my place, acting as if they owned it. So what if I just decided I'd had enough and wanted them out? Mark let out a slow whistle and set his pen down. "Whoa, that's a big step. We're talking family here. The kind who once told me," I trailed off, needing a moment to rethink. "But if I couldn't share this with my lawyer, who else could I? The family that once told me the best thing I'd ever do for them was to stay out of their lives." My daughter actually said that over Thanksgiving dinner. The room went quiet. Even the city noise 28 floors down seemed to pause. Mark looked at me, shock slipping past his professional demeanor. "She actually said it just like that?" he asked, clicking his pen twice. A classic move of his when deep in thought since forever. "Okay, you've got the legal right to move ahead. According to Illinois law, you've got to give notice before evicting anyone. Typically, that's 30 days unless there's another reason." "Can I shorten it?" I asked. "They don't have a formal lease. It's month to month, right?" Mark confirmed. I nodded. "Then technically, you can give them just 14 days. 2 weeks, he said, leaning forward. "But are you absolutely sure about this? It's a huge decision. Family ties can break beyond repair over stuff like this." I thought about Fern's cold stare and Vernon just standing by. 15 years as their go-to, then their punching bag, and finally the person they didn't want around. I'm as sure as I can be, more sure than I've been about anything else in a long time. Mark studied me for a moment, then nodded. Okay, let's draft the notice. It needs to be formal, written. State when they have to leave. And where will you be during all this? He asked. Someplace warm, I said, almost instinctively. But it felt right. Somewhere away from the cold, far from everything. Maybe Hawaii or Florida, somewhere like that. He turned to his computer, typing away. The printer behind him started up with a hum. I'm putting this together now. You'll have to give it to them directly or send it certified mail. Keep track of everything. Dates, times, maybe even witnesses. I watched as the printer spit out pages, full of legal jargon to put an end to this 15-year obligation. Just 2 short weeks to break free from being the family's financial support for 3 decades. Mark signed at the bottom and passed it to me. I'll hold on to this until you're ready. Once it's given to them, that's it. They have 14 days to leave from then. I took the envelope, light as paper but heavy with consequences, and thanked Mark. Don't thank me just yet, he said, standing to place a hand on my shoulder. Just be ready for what could come. Family disputes can get really ugly. It's already a mess, I responded. We shook hands again. His grip conveyed something more than a professional gesture. Maybe respect, maybe an understanding that sometimes the only way forward is to walk away. I walked over to the door of his office, holding that envelope as if it contained my written destiny. Just as I got close, Mark shouted, Lem! I spun back around. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing, he added. I looked him straight in the eye and said, that's one vote of confidence at least. But deep down, I wasn't completely convinced. Standing in that office high above the city, holding the potential to turn my whole life around, I felt a certainty that I hadn't felt since Maria's passing, maybe even more than ever before. I shut the door softly behind me. The train ride back felt different this time. With legal support now in place, that envelope tucked in my coat pocket meant everything had shifted. By the time I reached Oak Park, it was almost noon. I popped into a little diner near the station to grab some lunch. As I mechanically sipped on my coffee and nibbled on a sandwich, my mind was busy drawing up plans for the days ahead. That envelope from Mark stayed secure in my coat like a secret weapon, cocked and ready. But there was one more thing I had to take care of. At 2 away, I finally got home. The place embraced me with its intentional silence. No sounds from upstairs, no blaring television. There was a note scrawled in Fern's handwriting left on the kitchen counter. Went to Outlet Mall back tonight. F. Perfect. I had the place to myself for a while. I carefully hung my coat up and then strolled into my bedroom, tucking Mark's envelope away in my nightstand, right under a photo of Maria. I wandered over to the living room, to my dusty old desk with its ancient computer. Firing up that relic, it groaned and creaked like it hadn't been touched in ages. As it slowly powered on, I made myself some tea, a little ritual to keep my nerves in check. Seated at that desk chair, I glanced around the room. It was my house, built up with each mortgage payment, brick by brick. I hadn't realized how much I'd taken for granted until I had to think about everything. Logging into my online banking was a hassle. It took forever, and I had to re-enter my password twice before finally getting in. Once I did, I went straight to my account summary, eyes fixed on my pension account, number 19749. The funds were ample, a nice safety net. I reached for my phone, found the bank's customer service number in my home documents, and dialed it. An automated system welcomed me, thanking me for calling Chase Bank, and directed me through the menu options. For account information, press 1. For credit card services, press 2. I navigated through it all and found myself on hold, subjected to elevator music that tried to be relaxing but came off annoying. Minutes felt like hours as the clock ticked on, my tea went cold untouched, and the shadows stretched across the room. Finally, someone answered. Chase Bank, this is Patricia. How can I assist you today? She said, her voice blending professionalism with warmth. Little did she know she was about to help facilitate my great escape plan. I told her I needed information about my mortgage account and rattled off the account number from memory. It was impossible to forget after 15 years of payments. Absolutely, sir, she responded. Let me bring that up for you. Could I have your social security number and answer your security question? I provided the needed details, proving my identity while she expertly navigated her screen. Okay, Mr. Gomez, I see your account. How can I be of service today? She inquired. What's my remaining balance? I asked her directly. Your current mortgage balance is 43,127.89, she told me. That figure hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the 43K still burdening me after all these years of payments. Without batting an eyelid, I said, I'd like to pay it off, entirely, today. She hesitated, perhaps taken aback by my boldness. Oh, that's fantastic. May I ask why you're paying it off early? Personal, I responded, recognizing it was just part of her scripted routine. She went on to explain how things worked. Once they got the funds, it would only take a day or two to process, and I'd get a mortgage satisfaction document. Then she asked how I'd like to handle the payment, and I chose to make an online transfer from my pension account. Following her instructions, I opened another browser, logged into my bank, and set up the transfer from my retirement savings to the mortgage for $27.80. My finger paused above the confirm button. This wasn't a small amount, it was a hefty slice of my retirement savings. But what good was stowing away money for a future that felt more like a burden than a release? So I pressed confirm and went through all the hoops: authentication, security checks, final confirmation. And just like that, the transfer was underway. I've completed the transfer, I told Patricia. Perfect, I can see it processing now. Just to ensure all is correct, Mr. Gomez, following this processing, the property at 342 Oak Street in Oak Park will be in your name alone, correct? She confirmed. Yes, that's right. Just me, I answered. Congratulations on paying off your mortgage, sir. That's a huge milestone, she said kindly. We finished our chat with the usual polite goodbyes and she hung up. I remained there staring at my computer screen with the transfer still pending completion. It would need some time to finalize. Just then, my email pinged with a message saying, your mortgage payment of $43,127.89 has been received and is processing. You will receive final documentation within 2 business days. I decided to print it out. The printer whirred away, and soon enough, I had the confirmation in my hand. I looked it over, again and again. The words seemed so simple, yet they carried so much weight. Paid in full, pending final processing. Heading to the filing cabinet felt like some kind of ritual. I opened the home documents section, added the confirmation alongside the original mortgage papers, closed the drawer, then slumped onto the couch, holding on to that printout. Letting it all hit me. 15 years of effort, more than $287,000 paid with all the interest thrown in. One phone call, one quick button tap, and now the house was actually mine. I finally felt like I had control again. Maybe for the first time in ages, I wasn't just some pawn in the game. The sun spilled through the windows, turning settling dust into glinting gold. The house around me whispered with the familiar creaks and sighs. Sounds I knew so well but hadn't really paid attention to. These were my walls, my floors, my choices. I glanced at the document again. Property address, 342 Oak Street. Owner, Lemu Gomez. Mortgage all paid. When Fern threw around your house like it was some sort of complaint, she unintentionally answered what I'd been trying to figure out. She nailed it. It was my house, all mine. Legally, financially, completely. Fern never quite got what that really meant. I heard a car door shut outside, probably a neighbor, which brought me back to reality. The family would come back soon enough. I needed to clean up any clues, act natural, and wait for the right moment. I got up, folded the document, secured it back in the filing cabinet, closed and locked the drawer, then pocketed the key. When I turned around, everything looked just as it did an hour ago. Nothing seemed different on the surface, yet everything had changed underneath. I moved to the window, soaking in the late afternoon light over Oak Park. Snow was slowly disappearing from the sidewalks. A kid pedaled by on his bike. Life carried on while my world shifted. Another car door banged shut, this time closer. Voices traveled inside, with Fern's unmistakably sharp tone piercing right through the glass. They were back. I composed my face into tranquility, checked my reflection in the window. The guy looking back was calm, unruffled. They wouldn't have a clue about what I'd done while they were out throwing away money on things they didn't need. The front door creaked open. I could hear footsteps, someone rustling with plastic bags. Sophie's voice cut through, asking Vernon about dinner plans. Meanwhile, I stayed perched by the window like an old man, just watching life go by, waiting for the sun to dip below the horizon. That Saturday night, I kept myself apart, up in my room, while they gathered around the TV downstairs. The sounds of their laughter and a show's dialogue drifted up through the vents, Vernon's occasional interjections punctuating the evening, Sophie hollering for popcorn. It was the sound of a family, one that didn't quite feel like mine anymore. I stayed in my usual spot next to the window. Plane tickets to Hawaii lay quietly in my nightstand drawer, waiting for Sunday. The morning was cold and overcast. At 6:30 sharp, I roused to a silent house. They were all still tucked away, sleeping off Saturday's shopping extravaganza. Just perfect. I layered up, a thermal shirt, a thick sweater, and my heavy coat, and left a brief note on the counter. Gone out. L. I figured they didn't need any more explanation than that. The ride from Oak Park on the Red Line took about 40 minutes to hit downtown. I sat at the back, watching the city of Chicago shake itself awake through smudged windows. It was the regular crowd for a Sunday, a nurse ready for her hospital shift, a couple spruced up for brunch, and a man my age lugging a grocery bag. We all rode along in our separate bubbles, barely noticing one another. Michigan Avenue greeted me with the frigid bite of December air. The wind rolling off Lake Michigan sliced right through my coat. The magnificent mile was dressed up to its title, even in the chill. Massive stores boasted extravagant window displays. Festive lights bridged between buildings. Tourists, bundled against the gusts, carried shopping bags and paused for selfies. I wandered without a destination, my hands tucked deep in my pockets, needing to be anywhere but home. I passed Macy's with its sparkly holiday windows, Tiffany's with diamond rings gleaming brightly, and kids spilling out of brunch spots, riding a sugar high as their parents trailed behind, weary but content. In that throng, I blended into the background, and it was oddly comforting. Nobody thought twice about an old man in a gray coat walking alone on a Sunday morning. I was just another face in the sea of faces. Then my pace slowed. Tucked between a luggage shop and a Starbucks was a travel agency. The sign said Pacific Dreams Travel in large, bold blue letters. The window display hit me like an avalanche. There was a massive poster, at least 6 feet wide, proclaiming Escape to Paradise, Hawaii, $790. Beneath the header, there stretched Waikiki Beach, caught at sunset, with turquoise waters so clear you could see the sea floor, golden sands ribboning to palm trees against a sky that blazed with unimaginable oranges and pinks. Hues unseen amidst Chicago's gray December. A woman in the poster was wading into the surf, back to the camera, arms outstretched as if welcoming the entire ocean. I lingered there on Michigan Avenue, wind whipping around me, fixated on that poster like it was a doorway to another realm. My reflection shimmered faintly in the glass, an old man with weary eyes and gray hair juxtaposed against a tropical dreamland. It was almost laughable, but it was more than that. When was the last time I'd done something just for me? The thought surfaced, complete and demanding attention. How long had it been? Years, that was for sure. For too many years, my life was wrapped around Fern, the grandkids, ensuring everything went smoothly for them, while my own life felt on hold. Even after Maria was gone, I wasn't liberated. I channeled my grief into giving more of myself, making sacrifices, hoping they'd eventually see and value it all. I eyed the price on the poster, $799. My pension account boasted $143,000. When I crunched the numbers, this escape only took up 0.55% of my savings, a tiny fraction, less than what a month's mortgage swallowed during those 15 years. Still, I wavered. Would this escape be cowardly? Would it mean running away? Then Maria's voice floated back, clear as if she were beside me. It was a recollection from a chat on the porch 2 decades ago. Sipping lemonade on a warm evening, she had said, "Lim, when retirement comes, let's go to Hawaii. Just us, no strings attached, no plans, just the sun and the sea." But Hawaii was a dream that stayed just that. There was always something in the way. Fern's needs, financial headaches, or Maria's health. There was always something holding us back. "This isn't a way to get away," I muttered, surprising myself at the sound of my voice. A passing woman gave me a look, probably wondering why some guy was talking to himself, and quickened her pace. But for me, this moment was about taking back something I'd let go of for too long. Suddenly, everything felt clear. As I stepped inside and heard the bell above the door jingle, a wave of warmth hit me, fogging up my glasses. The walls were covered in posters showcasing the beauty of Hawaii, Maui's waterfalls, Big Island's volcanoes, serene cliffs. Steel drums played softly from hidden speakers, and the room was filled with the strong but pleasant scent of coconut, as if to make you believe you had already left the cold behind. Behind a messy desk sat a woman in her 30s, her dark hair pulled back tightly, smiling professionally until it turned genuine when her eyes met mine. "Good morning. Looking to ditch the cold?" she asked. "That's one way to put it," I responded, walking up to her desk while taking off my coat. "Tell me about Hawaii." Her face brightened, maybe thinking of the commission, but also genuinely interested. "Our most booked package is a 2-week stay on Oahu. It's right on Waikiki Beach. You'd have flights, activities, car options, all sorted," she said, spreading brochures like playing cards. "When are you thinking of going?" "What's the earliest you have?" I asked, my urgency catching her off guard. Her fingers hovered, then danced over the keyboard. "Let's see. We've got seats for December 3rd, she said after a moment. That's Tuesday, I realized, just 2 days away. It felt impulsive, yet absolutely right. "Perfect. Book it." She seemed surprised. Most people usually needed time to mull over details, ask others, or consult their calendars. "Going solo?" she inquired. "Yeah, just me." She typed away, offering up choices: a standard $79.99 room, a swankier one for $400 more, or an ocean view suite for $800. Morning or afternoon flights, rental vehicle or no, activities ranging from snorkeling to helicopter tours to dinner cruises. I promptly decided a nicer room, morning flight, no car. I'd walk or figure it out as I went, steering clear of scheduled tours, ready to let the days unfold as they pleased. She added it up: 1,047, so covering flights, 2 weeks at the Hilton Hawaiian Village on Waikiki Beach, with great views plus airport shuttles. I handed her my credit card. I was careful not to tap into my pension fund. It was too important to touch. As the card processed, she chatted about Hawaii's divine weather, endless food spots and activities, but mainly about lounging on the beach, the biggest draw. The receipt printer hummed, and she handed me my travel docs, boarding passes, hotel confirmations, all neatly tucked in a glossy "Your Hawaiian Adventure" folder. My flight was set for Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. out of O'Hare, reaching Honolulu by 12:30 p.m. their time. "Is this for a special occasion?" she asked, stapling the papers together. I studied her face. Younger, enthusiastic, probably someone who'd been to Hawaii and couldn't stop raving about it. How could I break down the years of supporting someone else's dream home, a daughter wishing me away, and finally deciding to stop letting life trample me? "You could say that," I told her, managing a genuine smile for the first time in days, a step towards a fresh start. She sent me off with a simple, heartfelt smile and a bright, "Well, congratulations. You're gonna love it. The ocean's something else entirely." With my papers clutched like a prized possession, I stepped back out into the world, the door's bell ringing behind me as a cold December gust tried to wrench the folder from my grip. But I held firm because in just a couple of days, everything would be different. White sands, waves, and sunshine, leaving worries behind. No more stewing over Fern or Vernon. No more guilt looming like a shadow. There I stood on Michigan Avenue, fairy lights glittering above and shoppers slipping past like water around a stone. And I felt something unfamiliar yet wonderful. Not dread, duty, or resignation, but genuine anticipation. Something good lay ahead. I'd managed to score a ticket for December 3rd with a 7 a.m. check-in. In just 2 days, I'd be on a plane, heading out west, ready to leave everything behind me. As I made my way back to the train station, I tucked my folder securely inside my coat, protecting it from Chicago's ruthless cold. But honestly, I was already imagining myself somewhere much warmer in my thoughts. Sunday night came, and I skipped dinner, staying holed up in my room instead. I laid out my tickets on the bed like they were layers of buried treasure maps, each representing an exciting adventure waiting just around the corner. Monday morning arrived and Fern left for work at 8 a.m. sharp. I listened to the sound of her car engine until it faded away into the distance. Downstairs, I could hear Vernon chatting, mentioning plans to take the kids to Sky Zone and be back by 6. By 4 p.m., the house was all mine to enjoy, filled with a cozy golden light courtesy of the December sun, making everything seem warmer than it actually was. I took a seat at the dining table where we just celebrated Thanksgiving together, the same spot where Fern had delivered her icy casual blow. A blank piece of paper, a blue pen, and a long, deep breath. I started with Dear Fern, but scribbled it out. Too gentle, too personal. Nope, this wasn't going to be some heartfelt letter from a dad. It needed to feel more like a formal notice from someone who really meant business. So I began again with Fern and Vernon. That sounded more right, more formal, acknowledged them both, made them both accountable. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. No point diving into the emotional swamp of why, no over-the-top emotions, no explanations they weren't entitled to. Just the facts, clear and cold. I crumpled up that draft and took another stab at it. The second was worse. Too much anger, spilling out every single betrayal. Then my third attempt was the complete opposite. Too detached, almost harsh. I wasn't trying to hurt them, just needed to lay down boundaries they should have respected long ago. So I paused, took a deep breath, and tried a fourth time. I wrote slowly, weighing each word like it was a piece of crucial evidence. It kind of was. This note might be dissected later, shared with lawyers or friends, maybe even posted online in some desperate plea for sympathy. Every word had to hold its ground. When I finished, I read it aloud to the empty kitchen. Fern and Vernon, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not gone in the way you wished for on Thanksgiving, but out of your lives on a different level. I've cleared the mortgage. The house at 342 Oak Street, Oak Park, is now solely mine. Proofs attached. You've got 14 days from today, December 2nd, 2024, to leave the property. I'm coming back on December 17th. If you're still around, I'll go through with a formal eviction. This isn't about being harsh. It's about accepting the consequences. You wanted me out, now it's your turn, but on my terms. I've given up 15 years for you, thrown down $287,000 in payments, lost countless hours of sleep worrying. And what do I get in return? A wish for my exit. Now I'm reclaiming my life, the one I've paused for all this time. Don't even think about reaching out. I won't respond. I signed it Lim Gomez and went over it 3 more times. Every word felt just right, maybe a touch chilly, but fair from end to end. Capturing the tone had been the biggest challenge. Not angry or upset, just final. Closing. I briefly considered adding something heartfelt, a line hoping they'd learn something from all this, mentioning Sophie and Alex, how I'd miss them. But what good would that do? Fern would twist any gentle sentiment into a weapon against me. This letter had to be precise, clean and clear-cut. I headed over to the file cabinet in the living room, unlocked it with a tiny key from my keychain, and fished out the mortgage satisfaction document. Paid in full was boldly stamped in red on top. Carefully, I folded it, slipped it into the kitchen, and wrapped up my letter around it. They fit perfectly into a big manila envelope from the drawer, which I sealed shut. Using a thick black marker, I wrote on the outside, "Fern and Vernon, read immediately." Now where to put it? Leaving it on the counter would make it easy to overlook. If I stuck it on the fridge door, they might not see it till morning. I needed to find just the right spot, somewhere they couldn't possibly miss it. Right when they walked in, my gaze immediately locked onto this crystal vase smack dab in the center of the table. It was a wedding gift from Maria's folks, a solid piece of cut glass that played with the light, sending rainbows bouncing around the room. That vase was Maria's pride and joy. She'd placed it there 2 decades back and would fill it with fresh flowers weekly until her health no longer allowed it. I carefully picked up the vase, slipped an envelope beneath, and set it back down. Its weight kept the envelope perfectly in place. For anyone to see what I'd left, they'd have to lift Maria's treasured piece, which felt just right. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Stepping back to the door, I checked. It was obvious. The envelope peeked out from under the vase like a tiny flag. Anyone entering the kitchen couldn't possibly overlook it. Just right. In my bedroom, I was feeling like I was gearing up for takeoff. I dug out an old blue Samsonite suitcase from the closet, scarred from years of travel but still going strong. Popped it open on the bed. Packing didn't feel like just another task. It was almost a ritual. Everything I chose to pack carried meaning. There were swimming trunks from 3 years back for a pool party I never made it to. 3 Hawaiian shirts still wrapped up, bought on impulse but too chill for an engineer's routine. Added some shorts, sandals, sunscreen, sunglasses, and even a hefty paperback. Lonesome Dove, 800 pages worth, waiting for a moment I'd been putting off. Folded everything with military precision, getting those corners lined up. Packing was all about efficiency from my construction days, making the most of space without the bulk. Closing the suitcase with a zip felt final, like closure. I set it by the bedroom door, all prepped for the early morning departure. Next on the list was the phone. I changed up the voicemail. "I'm away, don't reach out. I'll be in touch when I feel ready." Rehearsed a bit before finally recording. Not if I felt ready, but when. This time I was in control. My timeline, my call on when to reconnect. Set the alarm for 5 a.m., double-check the Uber app. Ride to O'Hare was arranged for 5:45 a.m., all sorted. The tickets were booked for United Flight 1204, leaving O'Hare for Honolulu at 9 a.m., gate C24. Check-in opened at 7 a.m., plenty of time. Everything was in place. Sitting on the bed's edge, my eyes wandered between the packed suitcase and the envelope waiting in the kitchen. Come morning, when Fern walked in for her morning coffee, she'd spot the crystal vase with the envelope under it. She'd need to move the vase, probably peeved at the obstacle, and then it'd all click for her. I tried visualizing her reaction. The shock, disbelief, maybe rage, and eventually the panic when she realized it was final. No place for tears, promises, or her manipulative games any longer. I'd spent too long fearing her disappointment, tiring of her anger and criticism. Now, I felt nothing. No glee, no revenge, no sorrow, just a refreshing clarity from finally laying down some boundaries. By 5:30 p.m., the sky had grown darker. Vernon and the kids would be home any minute. I heard his car, the door slamming, and children's voices filling the place as they came in. Sophie was shouting something about dinner, Vernon's response muffled by the noise. I stuck to my room, didn't bother heading downstairs. Let them guess if I was even around. By tomorrow, they'd have their answer. Tomorrow was a turning point. I glanced at a photo of Maria on my nightstand, a smile from 30 years ago, forever youthful, forever wise. "Hope you get it," I murmured. I gave it everything I had, really did. But there's only so much trying one can do, even for a dad, even for family. Switched off the lamp and lay on the bed, right on top of the covers, still dressed except for my shoes. Tomorrow meant an early start, but sleep was elusive, adrenaline coursing, anticipation bubbling over. Everything I'd held in for 15 long years finally unraveling. As the night wore on, the house fell into its usual rhythm. The TV downstairs was blaring, the kids were bickering over something silly, and Vernon was half-heartedly trying to play peacemaker. Just the normal family noise from the family I was gearing up to leave behind. In a dozen hours, it'd all be done. 2 hours after that, they'd find out. 4 hours more, and I'd be miles high, en route to the ocean that had been calling to me for ages. At 5 a.m., the alarm jerked me from my thoughts. I turned it off immediately, habit from years of construction work, waking at the first beep so others wouldn't be disturbed. Bit ironic, really, since waking them was part of the plan now. I got dressed quietly in the dark. Jeans, a t-shirt, a jacket, ready to fly for hours. My fingers knew where everything was. The old house felt alive around me, its wooden joints settling, and the furnace humming softly in the stillness before dawn, when everyone else was catching their Z's. My suitcase sat patiently by the door, and I stopped there just to listen. Down the hallway, Vernon's snores were loud and steady, like he'd never had a worry in the world. No other sounds. Sophie and Alex were out cold, missing a school day they wouldn't attend. Fern lost in her dreams. Even with my mental map of which stairs creaked, the 3rd, 7th, 10th, from my pre-Maria stealthy work escapes, they still creaked under me. But today wasn't about work. It was about breaking free. I paused at the kitchen doorway. A crystal vase scattered rainbows onto the table. Underneath it was an envelope, waiting like a small bomb. Fern would find it eventually, probably right after coffee. I could have left it elsewhere, or sent a text after landing. There were a million gentler ways, but gentleness hadn't cut it for a decade and a half. I turned, slipped out the front door, and stepped into the December chill. A reality check. The door closed quietly behind me, a last period in a long story. Outside, an Uber was idling, a white Toyota Camry. Apps said the driver was Ahmed, probably in his 30s, his eyes weary as he glanced in the rear view. He loaded my suitcase without batting an eye. Just another ride to the airport before dawn. I might as well have been anyone. Terminal 3, United Airlines, I directed him. As we pulled away from 342 Oak Street, I sneaked a look back. The house stood in shadow except for the porch light I forgot to shut off, while the truce slept inside. This family's comfortable myths were shifting into reality's revelations. We turned the corner, leaving the house behind. At 5:45 a.m., the freeway was unexpectedly empty for a Tuesday. Occasionally a semi would rumble by, folks heading to early shifts or off to flights. We sped eastward, headlights lighting up the night. Far off, the Chicago skyline rose, its buildings twinkling against the slightly brightening sky, indifferent to human dramas below. Ahmed drove in silence, which suited me just fine, with some smooth jazz softly playing. I watched as the view changed from industrial lots to suburbs, passing by airport hotels, finally crawling towards O'Hare, where the massive terminals sat like spaceships ready to launch. At United's Terminal 3, Ahmed got my bag. I thanked him and tipped through the app as he drove off. Standing there at the curb, the airport buzz was alive with travelers heading in. Families, business travelers. The unique vibe of early morning flights at 6:30 a.m. Inside, there was an orchestrated chaos. The check-in kiosks beeped, ushering people through the digital dance. I approached one, punched in my confirmation number, and my boarding pass popped out. Seat 17A by the window. Just perfect. My bag was tagged for Honolulu and disappeared along the conveyor belt. Symbolic somehow, like my old life forging ahead, waiting for me in a paradise I could only dream of. The airport security process was quick since it was still pretty early in the day. I had the usual drill of removing my shoes, taking off my belt, and for those with laptops, getting them out for inspection. But for me, no laptop to worry about. Just a simple carry-on with all the essentials. A good book, some sunscreen, my wallet, and my phone. I cleared the metal detector without a problem and merged into the flow of travelers. At gate C24, I found myself super early for my 9 a.m. flight. I decided to splurge to the tune of $6.50 on a not-so-great cup of airport coffee and sank into a chair deliberately designed to be too uncomfortable for sleeping. As I sipped the lousy coffee, I watched people around me, couples who had that honeymoon glow, a frazzled family managing three hyperactive kids despite the ungodly hour, business folks glued to their screens, and lone wolves like myself. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, unlike me, who felt free, untethered, on the run, a mix of all that. My phone stayed quiet until it didn't. Fern's name flashed across the screen at precisely 8:32 a.m., and I let it ring out to voicemail. By 8:33, she was trying again, but I ignored it. The pattern continued, 8:34, 8:35, and it felt like an endless stream of buzzing, practically turning my phone into a mini massage device by 8:37. I put the phone face down on my leg, internally feeling every buzz, though I refused to acknowledge the screen. I figured other travelers nearby were probably wishing I'd just answer and stop the noise. By 8:40, I dodged 12 calls. I took a swig of the now slightly colder and still bad coffee. As 8:45 rolled around, the voicemail alerts stacked up. I didn't press play. There was no need. I could predict Fern's reaction. Initial shock, then into anger, eventually spiraling into a frantic state. A predictable pattern whenever life didn't go as she planned. At 8:50, another call came through. I let it ring, contemplating whether to ignore it to make my stance clear or to pick up and illustrate my indifference to the chaos. Picking up could have shown Fern she no longer had power over me. By 8:55, my resolve wavered, and I finally answered the call. Her voice blasted through, making me hold the phone away from my ear, earning glances from folks around who seemed to think I was the one causing a scene. After turning down the volume, I brought the phone back. "So, found the note, did you?" I said, cool as ice. Her voice was an anxious blur. "You can't do this. Our home is here." I held on to my calm. "Check the paperwork. It's mine." Her tone shifted, desperation leaking in as she sounded borderline hysterical. "Where are we supposed to go?" she asked. "That's not my problem. 2 weeks is what you've got," I told her. When she accused me of cruelty, I set the record straight. "It's fair. You wanted me gone. Now you're leaving." Her tone turned pleading, an old maneuver I recognized too well. "We need to talk this out," she tried. "We talked last Thanksgiving. You said the best gift I could give would be to disappear," I reminded her. "Here's something different, a life lesson." I could faintly hear Vernon in the background. He wanted a say in all of this, but I cut it short. "Vernon, how about finding a job? 15 years is long enough." The next thing I heard was Fern's voice breaking. "Please come back so we can talk." "You'll never catch me," I replied, savoring the moment she grasped how definitive this was. I ended the call, turned off my phone, and laid it silently on the chair beside me. Just then, the PA system came to life, announcing it was about time for United Flight 1204 to Honolulu to begin boarding in roughly 5 minutes. Zone 1 folks could start getting in line. I stood up, feeling my 65-year-old joints creak from the hard chair, not that a bit of Hawaiian sun wouldn't fix. I picked up my carry-on, joining the throng heading to board. Families were wrangling their little ones, couples double-checking their boarding passes, and business travelers sending those last emails before we all headed west. The gate agent was already there, all smiles and poise, ready to shepherd us to our plane. They informed everyone, expressing gratitude for their patience as they started boarding United Flight 1204 bound for Honolulu, beginning with Zone 1. My boarding was in Zone 2, so I hung back, watching as the first class and premium economy passengers made their way down the jetway. When they got to Zone 2, I scanned my boarding pass and heard that satisfying beep that let me proceed through the passage to the plane. There it was in front of me, the huge Boeing 777, ready to carry us across the vast Pacific. A flight attendant with a friendly smile welcomed me as I stepped inside. "Good to have you on board. 17A is just over to your left, about halfway down. I reached my seat, which happened to be an emergency exit window seat with extra legroom, perfect for stretching out. I hoisted my carry-on into the overhead compartment and got comfortable, fastening my seatbelt. Next to me, a couple in matching Hawaiian shirts were seated in 17B and 17C. They looked like honeymooners, just a bit older, maybe in their 60s. Catching my glance, they smiled warmly. "Is this your first trip to Hawaii?" the woman asked. I nodded. "Kind of, yeah." She grinned wider. "You'll fall in love with it. We're here for our 40th anniversary. Hawaii is truly special." I returned a polite smile and turned to look out the window, not really in the mood for chatting. I was on a different kind of anniversary trip, leaving some emotional baggage behind and setting some boundaries. The plane was filling up with all sorts, families, couples brimming with romance, and solo travelers. Everyone was chasing a bit of paradise. Overhead compartments slammed shut as flight attendants made the rounds, checking seat belts, stowing bags, and running through safety demos that were mostly ignored. Then came the sound I was waiting for, the cabin door closing with a firm thud. That was the real start of the trip. No more passengers, no getting off, just all of us heading to Hawaii together. The PA system crackled to life. "Flight attendants, prepare for departure." We jolted back, pulled by a tug we couldn't see. Watching out the window, I saw our slow progression towards the runway. Airport terminals slipped past, other planes lined up, and ground crew in bright vests busily orchestrating the scene. The captain's voice then came through the speakers. "Everyone, we're third in line for takeoff. The trip to Honolulu should take around 9 hours. We'll be cruising at 39,000 feet, and over there, it's a beautiful sunny 82 degrees." Such warmth was a far cry from the chilly departure point. When we finally turned onto the runway and paused, the engines kicked up their familiar whirring, preparing for liftoff. I felt the physics at play, getting ready to defy gravity. Then came the push of acceleration, pressing me into my seat as the blurred scenery zipped by outside the window. There's that moment when you're still on the ground, yet fully committed to the sky. And then, we were airborne. Chicago slipped into the distance as we made a gradual left climb. From up high, the city looked like a neatly laid out grid, while the icy Lake Michigan glinted in the sunlight below. Cars were tiny dots on the highways, in dense downtown where I once schemed my escape grew distant, eventually just a blip in my memory. As we reached 35,000 feet, the seatbelt sign flicked off. Around me, people got comfy, reclined seats, cracked open books or tablets, or caught some sleep. I picked up Lonesome Dove, felt the texture of the first page, and dove in. Its narrative, set in the Wild West, was worlds apart from anything in my life, exactly the kind of escape I needed. A flight attendant passed by, asking if I fancied a drink. It was only 9:45 a.m., early for any kind of libation, but vacations are an exception. I opted for a tomato juice. She poured it over ice and handed it to me. Never one to drink tomato juice before, today felt like trying something new. With a sip, I found it tangy, salty, strange, but oddly okay. Below us, Chicago faded under layers of cloud. Down there, Fern would likely be anxious, Vernon probably unhelpful as always, and Sophie and Alex confused. Mark might be fielding frantic calls, all about finding some legal way to intervene. But there I was, soaring at 35,000 feet, book in hand, tomato juice in the other, heading for an ocean I'd longed to meet my whole life. I lost myself in the pages of my book. We started our descent about 3 hours later. From the window, Hawaii emerged from the endless expanse of blue, a scene of volcanic peaks cloaked in green, white sands winding around dark rocks, and brilliant turquoise seas that seemed almost dreamlike. Touching down was like stepping into another realm. The doors opened, welcoming in the warm, floral-scented tropical air that felt like a refreshing embrace after Chicago's brutal December winds. The baggage claim was slow, but I didn't mind one bit. A hotel staffer was waiting for us at arrivals with a sign for the Hilton Hawaiian Village, and they placed a plumeria lei around my neck. The sweet fragrance was almost overwhelming. Aloha, they greeted. Welcome to paradise. Saying aloha felt strange on my tongue, but man, it was great to be here. The shuttle driver was a talker, chatting about the weather, beaches, and luau's. I nodded along, half listening, while my eyes took in Waikiki outside the window. Palm-lined streets, glimpses of the ocean's impossible blue between buildings. Tourists wandered in bright shirts, a world away from Chicago's hustle and bustle. Check-in was a laid-back affair, taking a good 20 minutes. The lobby was almost like a big open pavilion, with no walls, just pillars supporting a roof, open to gardens and the ocean. Koi swam in the ponds and kids' laughter filled the air. Everything seemed to slow down and soften, like even time decided to chill out. My room was 1247 on the 12th floor. I shared the elevator with a couple on their honeymoon who seemed glued to each other. They exited on the 11th floor, leaving me alone with my suitcase and a pleasant, easy feeling in my chest as I went higher. The room wasn't anything extravagant, just a bed, a desk, and a balcony. I dropped my stuff and headed straight for the sliding glass door. Stepping outside, the ocean spread out in front of me. Waikiki Beach curved like a band of gold in both directions. The waves rolled in, a steady rhythmic dance. Surfers dotted the water like commas in a sentence. Off to the right, Diamond Head Mountain loomed, vast and volcanic, completely unconcerned with our little human concerns. I stood there a while, soaking up the salty breeze, the Lay's plumeria scent, and the faint hints of sunscreen wafting up. The ocean just kept on as it always had, millions of years before me, and would continue long after. No one knew where I was. No demands, no obligations. That first day I did absolutely nothing. I slipped into shorts for the first time in ages. Long Chicago winters and construction site work had left my legs ghostly pale. Barefoot, I wandered over the hot sand until I reached where the cool ocean kissed the shore. I rented a chair and an umbrella from a friendly kid who called me uncle. I lay back, closed my eyes, and let the timeless sounds of the ocean wash over me. Waves crashing, kids playing, soft music from a hotel bar nearby, the distant hum of a jet ski, and bird songs unfamiliar to my ears. I drifted in and out of sleep, losing track of time entirely. My phone was in the room, turned off. Not being reachable felt like tossing a heavy load off my shoulders. As the sun began to set, I made my way back to the room, showered, and had dinner via room service on the balcony, watching the ocean transition from blue to golden to gray. That night, I slept deeply for 10 solid hours. The next morning, surfing was on the agenda. The instructor, Jake, probably wasn't a day over 25 with a tan that seemed lifelong, was bursting with energy. Our small group gathered on the sand, me, two college girls, and a family with a teenage son. It was my first surfing lesson ever. Honestly, it was the first time I'd done something just for fun in 15 years. Jake sensed it, with his board under his arm, reading the story in my eyes. Whoa, that's heavy. All right, let's get you on that board. On dry land, it all seemed simple enough. Paddle, stand up, don't fall. Jake made it look like a piece of cake, like he'd done it 1,000 times. The college girls were giggling with each other. The teen was clearly not impressed, and I was focused on remembering the steps. But once I hit the water, it was a whole different game. The board was all over the place. Those gentle waves felt anything but gentle. I paddled hard like Jake had instructed, and when he yelled, "Pop up," I gave it a shot. My feet slipped, and I went face down into the briny deep, nose burning as I came up, coughing. Jake laughed, not in a bad way, more like he was enjoying himself. "Ready for another go?" he asked, raising his eyebrows. Of course I did, and I went at it again, and again, fell each time. My arms were screaming with effort. 3 more face-first dives into the ocean. Meanwhile, the college girls managed to stay upright, celebrating their success. The teen only stayed standing a few seconds before a huge wipeout, but eventually I got it. I stood up, found my balance, rode a wave for around 3, maybe 4 seconds. I was actually surfing, then I wiped out. but I didn't mind. I was laughing. This was supposed to be out of my reach. You're never too old to give it a shot, Jake said as he paddled over, a big smile on his face. I kept trying, 8 more attempts, stood up a couple more times, and chuckled every single time I fell. By the end of the session, my arms were pure jelly, my cheeks ached from grinning, and I realized I hadn't laughed so much at myself in ages. Sore from everything, I didn't fight taking a nap that afternoon. Day 3, I decided to hike Diamond Head. I left early to dodge the heat, taking an Uber to the trail start. It was a steep trek, paths zigzagging, stairs and tunnels cutting through volcanic rock. Sweat dripped down my back, legs protesting. People passed me by, fit young couples, families with energetic kids. But I kept going, slow but steady. At the top, the view was breathtaking. The ocean stretched endlessly. The city seemed tiny below. Mountains faded into the distant haze. The wind whooshed up cool from the crater, and standing there, my heart racing, made me feel truly alive. Tourists were busy with selfies. A family even asked me to take their photo. Happy to do it. To them, I was just another older guy out for a hike. Nothing out of the ordinary. Exactly how I wanted it. The way down was easier. Treated myself to shave ice from a truck, rainbow-colored, sugary sweet, ice cold on my tongue. Best thing I'd tasted. The days settled into a routine. Visited a farmer's market, chose juicy pineapples that dripped sticky sweetness down my chin. Lunch was always a poke bowl, raw ahai with soy and sesame, tasting like the ocean. Afternoons were for lounging in a beach chair with a book, sometimes dozing off. Evening drinks like Mai Tais warming me while I watched sunsets that painted the sky unbelievably beautiful. One night, I ended up at a luau, watched fire dancers spinning flames, hula dancers telling stories with their hands, ukulele music drifting around us. Sat next to Tom and Linda, a retired couple from California in their 70s, holding hands like love-struck teenagers. Here with family? Linda asked during a break. No, I said, just me. First time traveling solo. Tom gave a nod, understanding. Good for you, said Linda, offering an approving nod. We've been coming here for 20 years. Best choice we ever made. Wish I'd done it earlier. She patted my arm comfortingly and added, better late than never, dear. One day I found myself doing nothing at all. Picked a palm tree close to my hotel, spread out a towel, and opened up Lonesome Dove. Got through 50 pages before nodding off. Woke up to a little hermit crab making its way toward my book. I couldn't help but laugh, even though the crab seemed none too pleased and scuttled off. Nobody was reaching out to me. My phone stayed silent, and there was no one asking for my help. After a week of this solitude, I decided to shake things up and grabbed a solo kayak, bright yellow and perfect for cutting through the water. I paddled past the reef until the sparkling turquoise turned into a rich, deep blue. The seabed disappeared far below, with fish glinting like quicksilver darts in the crystal waters. My arms groaned with the effort, but it was the kind of soreness I chose for myself, not one I was forced to bear. I set the paddle down, letting the current take me along while I watched the clouds drift by. A pelican landed nearby, sizing me up with curious eyes before lunging to catch its meal. I chuckled to myself. The bird was blissfully unaware of my worries. It didn't care about my mortgage or my teenage daughter's attitude or all those years spent putting others first. It was simply focused on finding dinner. That evening, back at the hotel, the sand washed off my skin for what seemed like the 100th time. I realized I'd been smiling more. I treated myself to a dinner of Ono fish, perfectly grilled. The waiter was friendly but not too in my face, and the beer was refreshingly cold. The sunset was pure art, no price tag attached. Midway through savoring my meal, I was hit with the realization that I'd been on this island for a week. Only 7 days left before heading back home, and the thought of leaving now felt too soon. I browsed the hotel business center, where I stumbled upon a brochure for a day tour of Big Island's volcanoes. Just the images were enough to captivate. Glowing lava, enormous craters, steam billowing from the earth. It was like another planet compared to Chicago's concrete maze. I grabbed a brochure, glanced at my laptop, and figured I could book a flight for the next day without a fuss. Island hopping was a breeze, nothing more than a quick jump to check out the volcano. I fired up the laptop, hit the booking site, and got clicking. The following day, I woke up with the sun, packed a small bag, and boarded a 7 a.m. flight heading to Kona. The aircraft was compact and prop-driven, seating probably 30 people, tops. We soared over Oahu, arcing westward until the sunlit bulk of the Big Island broke through the clouds. After a brief 45-minute flight, we were touching down on landscapes that resembled a lunar landing. The black lava fields seemed otherworldly. At the car rental, things went smoothly. A young woman behind the counter handed me keys to a white sedan. Volcano Park is about a 2-hour trek northeast, she hinted. Roads are solid, but rain could be a concern as you climb. Hitting the road, the scenery opened up before me. The arid coast morphing into lush forests, which gradually faded into stark volcanic terrains. Climbing up to 4,000 feet, the weather turned cooler, and soon the rain demanded the windshield wipers' attention. Arriving at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, I paid the entry fee, snagged a map, and set my sights on Kilauea Crater. I parked up, grabbed my jacket to combat the surprising chill. Rain and elevation were a stark reminder that Hawaii isn't all swaying palms and sunny beaches. The sight from the rim was staggering, a huge caldera stretching a mile across, carved deep into the planet. Steam hissed up from the edges, and even in daylight, a red glow pulsed from an active lava lake within. There was a young park ranger nearby, not far out of his teens, and absolutely geeked about geology as he spoke to a bunch of tourists. "This volcano, she's a creator and a destroyer," he said, his hands sweeping over the vast crater. "It breathes life into these islands but demands our respect. Dirt you stand on was born from chaos." I muttered softly to myself, "Feels familiar." He heard me, caught my eye, and gave a knowing nod. "Going through your own eruption?" he asked with a smile. "Starting to find my way again?" I said. His nod was understanding, like he got it. As I strolled along the rim trail, the earth's heat hit me, mingling with that sharp sulfur smell of rain mixing with volcanic rock. The ground beneath my feet felt almost alive, like it had its own pulse. This mountain had wiped out whole towns and birthed new lands, both destroying and creating for thousands of years. Standing there, it hit me that destruction isn't always bad. Sometimes it's needed to clear a path for new beginnings, to tear away the old to welcome something better. I took some photos, not for social media likes, but as a personal reminder that I had actually been at the edge of creation. The drive back was peaceful. I returned the car, grabbed an evening flight to Oahu, landing in Honolulu just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Exhausted, yet content. The next day, I felt a strong urge to explore again, so I rented another car. With an itch that needed scratching, I hit the road. Heading north on routes like H1 to H2, I navigated using the tourist map I practically knew by heart. The North Shore was my destination, a place where famous surf beaches and chilled-out little towns soaked up the island's laid-back vibes. Rolling into Halewa, I found a bustling place filled with surf shops and food trucks dishing out shrimp. I got myself some garlic shrimp from one bright food truck and ate it right in the parking lot, with juices dripping everywhere. Right then, it felt like the best meal ever. True to its name, Sunset Beach was incredible. It was December, so those enormous winter waves were on time, towering at 20 feet as they crashed ashore. Pro surfers were tackling them like it was the ultimate thrill, playing dangerously close to the edge. I perched on some volcanic rocks for what seemed like an hour, just watching. These surfers wore grins the whole time, catching waves that could well have been their last. That's what living looked like to me. I treated myself to another shave ice, going for a sharp orange flavor this time, before heading back south. On my way, I stopped at a roadside fruit stand to pick up a papaya from an older Filipino man who barely spoke English. We shared a smile, and I was off again. Just a week prior, I wouldn't have noticed any of this. too raw and angry to appreciate it. Such beauty once felt like it slapped me when my life was in shambles, but now I could absorb it all. Somewhere between those wipeouts in the ocean and the sun's fiery touch, my anger had melted away, leaving behind an unexpected freedom. Next on my agenda was Pearl Harbor, with an early morning tour lined up. It's a place that deserves reverence. The USS Arizona Memorial sits atop the sunken ship beneath, with oil still leaking out even after 80 years. The ship's tears, they call it. Walking on that white memorial and reading the names etched in marble was a solemn experience. Young men, some just 18, born in 1922, had sacrificed their lives for their country. That was ultimate sacrifice, not to be taken lightly. Pearl Harbor got me thinking deeply about what true sacrifice means. Nothing that's handed over without a choice. Those sailors didn't have one. I've always had options. It took me 65 years to finally start making the right choices. I stood there quietly, not praying, just showing respect. Some moments deserve that silence. Leaving, I felt reflective, picking up a small history book from the gift shop as a keepsake. My last full day crept up faster than I'd liked. Instead of cramming in more tours, I drifted to one of those ubiquitous ABC stores. I picked up a little notebook, then made my way back to a palm tree I'd started calling mine, where I'd once spotted a hermit crab scurrying about. Sitting under it with pen and paper, I wasn't writing a diary, just capturing thoughts. I'd come here trying to flee, but left with a plan. The options were clear. Maybe sell the house or rent it out, find a smaller apartment, think about extended stays in Hawaii, work on my own terms as a consultant, maybe volunteer or even entertain the idea of dating again. That last one felt strange, but possible. I realized it had been ages since I thought about what I truly wanted, not just what I felt was expected of me. As I wandered along the shore, lost in my thoughts, I picked up small shells, polished smooth by the ocean's embrace. Sophie had a passion for collecting shells, and for a brief moment, I missed my grandkids. But just like that, the feeling faded, knowing they'd be there when I was ready to reconnect, if that time ever came. Packing day arrived, and my feelings were all over the place. I left the flower lay on the bed since customs wouldn't allow fresh flowers through anyway. As I folded clothes still tinged with the smells of sunscreen and sea salt, I checked out of my room. I took one more stroll along the beach and hit up the hotel bar that night, cradling a light, fruity beer from Kona Brewing. The bartender gave me a welcoming smile and wiped down the glasses. "Heading home?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied, feeling a shift about the idea. He nodded knowingly, as if he'd heard that 1,000 times. It always changes you, doesn't it? Hawaii has that effect. I decided to savor one last treat, dining oceanfront just outside the hotel. The place had crisp tablecloths, gleaming silverware, and a menu with prices that seemed as hidden as buried treasure. A fancy way to treat myself. I ordered lobster tail, marking a little celebration just for me. It arrived with butter for dipping and a beautiful lemon garnish that almost felt too pretty to ruin. "Last night in this paradise?" the waiter asked as he set the dish down. "Yeah, back to reality tomorrow," I said. He glanced at me thoughtfully. "You seem different now, more at ease." "That's just how I am," I expressed, feeling genuinely thankful. "Come back soon," he said warmly. "Absolutely, I will," I promised myself. The sun dipped, painting the sky in striking shades of blood red that faded into purple. Tourists all around snapped photos, trying to capture a magic that couldn't be caught. But I simply watched, letting time slip away. Tomorrow meant flying back to Chicago, but I didn't plan on falling back into old habits. 2 weeks were enough to pull me back to the person I was before just being known as Fern's dad. I was Lem, 65 years old, still a work in progress. Once there was an engineer who built remarkable things, demanding a certain respect. And here I was, in my room, setting an alarm for an absolutely early flight. 4 a.m. Everything was packed except the clothes for travel. The bed was a welcome place to flop down, windows wide to let in the ocean sounds. Sleep, though? Nope. It wasn't nerves that kept me awake, but anticipation of what was to come. The upcoming day would tell me if they'd moved out or if I was looking at a mess of unresolved drama. I truly didn't mind either way. I'd tackle whatever awaited. The house was mine, not just legally, but in every meaningful sense. If they hadn't left, I had Mark's paperwork to rely on. If they were gone, I'd adapt to a new chapter. Lying there in the dark, lulled by the calming waves, I was more than ready. Excited even. The old me? I'd be jittery, making calls to mediate, feeling guilty over everything. But this new me, the one who had ventured solo and explored the Pacific coast, could handle anything. I didn't fall asleep, just stayed there, absorbing the sky's transformation from deep black to soft gray, then dawn's gentle pink. This was my last Hawaiian sunrise before heading back home, which now felt like a realm of possibilities rather than a cage. Home was mine. At 4 a.m., though awake well before, I got up to witness one final breathtaking Pacific sunrise. A quick shower, and I was into jeans and a jacket, mentally bracing for Chicago's winter bite. The clothes felt weighty after weeks of lightweight shorts. My suitcase was zipped, filled with Hawaiian shirts still tinged with that coconut sunscreen scent and the feel of newfound possibilities. I checked out at the hotel's front desk by 5 a.m. The clerk, somewhat groggy, parted with a smile and a mahalo, sending me off into the early hours bathed in gratitude. I hopped onto the airport shuttle under a dim sky as Honolulu lazily stretched itself awake. Delivery trucks hummed along the roads. Workers got their day started, while the city enjoyed a brief moment of peace before tourists filled the streets. At the airport, I took one final breath of that sweet, floral scent before diving into the concrete maze of the terminal. Our plane was supposed to leave at 8, and after a day of reading, snoozing, and just thinking, we landed at O'Hare 9 hours later. Chicago time said it was 6 p.m., but my body was stuck in the middle of the day. From the window, the city stretched out in a bleak winter gray. The cold hit me like a reality check at baggage claim. Everyone was bundled up, their faces stern in the crisp air. It was a stark contrast to Hawaii's chill vibe. Instead of an Uber, I went for a taxi, needing the alone time to wrap my head around things. The driver kept to himself, just cruising along while I watched the city lights zip by. On the highway, the lights streaked into warm oranges as we sped through the night. Oak Park rolled up, the streetlights casting a gold glow on the snow. Where was I going? Oh yeah, 34 Duba Oak Street. My hands shook a bit. First real nerves I'd felt in a while. What if they were still here? What if it was a mess? What if... The car turned onto my street and I squinted at my driveway through the windshield. It was empty. Relief washed over me and I nearly laughed out loud. This was it. I paid the driver and tossed him a good tip. I was feeling generous, and hauled my suitcase out. The house was dark, windows vacant, and no sign of Vernon's car. Key in hand, I stepped up to the door. It turned easily. Inside, I flicked on the lights. The living room was practically bare. Her couch, her tables, that massive TV she loved, all gone. Only my recliner was left, Maria's gift for my 50th birthday. I slowly roamed the house, lighting up each room. In the kitchen, her table was gone, but my tiny two-person one still sat snug by the wall. The fridge quietly did its thing, a lone magnet holding a note. I pulled it off and read it aloud to the empty room. Dad, you won. We're gone. Hope you're happy, but don't expect us to ever forgive you. You chose money over family. I stood there, note in hand, and let out a bitter chuckle that filled the kitchen. Money over family, I echoed. No, Fern. I chose not to let myself be used. I tore the note, dropping it into the trash, satisfied with the finality. Then I moved through the house, my untouched bedroom, and the guest room where they'd stayed, now just empty space. The carpet showed where furniture had long stood. The kids' rooms, just empty walls and closets now, with only dust bunnies playing in the corners. Even the bathroom was cleared of their things, though my shaving kit was still there. I sat on the stairs midway between floors, soaking it all in. Each step echoed. The house felt larger, emptier, almost refreshed, like a weight had been lifted. I stood, wandered about, and threw open every window. The frigid December air rushed in, sharp and cleansing, sweeping away 15 years of pent-up frustration. My phone had been off since the flight, tucked in my pocket. I finally powered it up after weeks. Notifications flooded in, 14 voicemails and 8 messages, all from Fern and Vernon. I didn't listen or read any of them, just deleted everything and blocked their numbers. Silence again. I settled into Maria's chair and dialed up Mark. He picked up on the second ring. "Lem, you're back. They're gone now?" he asked, pausing. "How do you feel?" "Feels like a weight's off my shoulders, and I can finally breathe," I replied. "What do you think is next?" I looked around at the bare room, the windows showcasing the crisp December night in Chicago, and for the first time, it felt like it truly belonged to me. I might sell this place and downsize, or maybe I'll spend more time soaking up the sun in Hawaii. The world's wide open now. "You've earned it, man. You really have," Mark said, cheering me on. "Appreciate it, Mark. For everything," I replied. We chatted a bit longer, touching on logistics, legal stuff, and what comes next. Mostly, though, it was just friends catching up. After we hung up, the quiet was nice, calm, and all mine. The smell of freshly brewing coffee filled the air for the first time in weeks, and I stood by the kitchen window watching it brew. Oak Park sparkled with lights, cars rushing by, and life ticking on. The city was unconcerned with my small win. The coffee, though, tasted comforting, like home. Mug in hand, I wandered to the living room, settled into my chair, and took in the scene around me. The house was empty, yet it felt truly mine for the first time in ages. I took my time walking through each room. No more of Vernon's mess, no more of Fern's constant hassling. The tension that once hid in every conversation was gone. Just silence now. I glanced at the photo gallery on my phone. There was one of me wiping out on a surfboard in Hawaii, laughing as I toppled off. A sweaty selfie from the top of Diamond Head, grinning like mad. A snapshot of the farewell dinner sunset, the sky painted in an incredible red. Just 2 weeks was all it took to remind me I was more than a dollar sign, more than a pushover. They expected me to crumble, thinking I was too old, too soft, too dependent on them to find meaning. But they were wrong. That sunset was just a new beginning. In the bedroom, I stumbled upon Maria's photo chest, a place holding memories too dear to lose. I pulled out a picture from when we celebrated our 40th anniversary. Her smile, forever captured at 61, before the illness took her from me, whispering softly, "I did it, Maria." My words bounced around the empty space. I chose myself. When I gently placed the photo down, it felt like she'd be proud, like she'd been waiting for me to tap into the strength. Here I am, 65, with this house in my name, a Hawaiian tan, and a blueprint for whatever comes next. Fern might have wanted me gone, but not like this. I came out on top, not spiteful, just because I finally chose me. Chicago spread out beyond the windows, gray and gorgeous, full of possibilities. Tomorrow I'd dive into those plans, maybe ring up a realtor, or perhaps book another Hawaiian getaway, maybe both. But tonight I just soaked in being here, breathing freely. The house was empty, but my life, it was overflowing. Tomorrow I dive into plans, tonight I simply breathe.